Hello and welcome to another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast, episode 510. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and I am not alone. I have a returning champion guest who's visited the show many times. I'm looking so forward to catching up with him and the great variety of things that he does. You know, a lot of people say that I'm one of the busiest people they know, and this gentleman puts me to shame. I don't know how he does it, but he does. David Rosen. David, how are you?
I am great. I am busy, as you said. I am tired, but I'm hanging in there.
You're a little bit younger than me, but even at your age, I can't imagine the volume of stuff that you're doing. You're constantly putting out new music. You've got your live shows, the podcast. You're a producer. Is there some element of sleep pattern that you've developed that just allows you to minimize sleep?
No, I wish I could get more. Right now, it's roughly 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., but a lot of times I get kept up late. And then Harvey, the lead singer of the Pup Pups, which we'll talk about a little later, sometimes wakes me up early. So, he's 17 and a half. So when he needs to go potty, I'm up. What can I do? And so, it's tough, but I'm trying my best to get as much sleep as I can.
Well, I'm excited that Harvey's still with us because I remember that was a
Yes.
concern that you had talked about. Obviously, age is very
Yeah.
important when it comes to animals, and dogs don't quite have the same lifespan that we do, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But he's doing good.
He's doing as good as can be. He is very old, but he's doing great. As the song goes, he's
Mhm.
doing great from the Pup Pup second album. But yeah, he's doing great. He's had this heart condition and pancreatitis bouts and kidney stuff and all this for years, but he just keeps on trucking. He's awesome.
You gotta love it. How are his spirits? Does he seem to be enjoying life despite all that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as long as we, get to give him his snacks, that's his main thing nowadays is just all day snacks. He might interrupt this podcast at some point, so we'll see what happens.
Quite all right. If you need to take a break to take care of him, I'm certainly not going to stand in the way of that, or sit, as it were, because I don't stand for a podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you've got a new Pup Ups album in the work. You're getting close to finishing this one, aren't you?
It is 99% done. I just got to do a little bit. I was actually just this morning, I was kind of making my list of touch-ups that I need to do to finish it, as well as artwork and then like getting my Bandcamp and all that set up for the new release and everything. But yeah, it'll be up for pre-order at the time we're recording, like within the next week. And as I always do with the last four Pup Pups albums, I always do a pre-order bonus where people can get their pet included on the bonus song. And
Mhm.
so, of course, I got to record that once we get a nice amount of pre-orders going. Usually, I'll give it like a 2 week lead, and that way, just anybody who really wants to get in on that bonus song, they have their moment to do it. But yeah, I'm super excited about it because this album is essentially a Harvey solo album.
Oh,
Uh, that is a very loose definition because obviously he's a dog. But all of the songs are him and me, or just him, or just me. But it's just Harvey and his dad. No cats on this one.
hmm.
No singing about other animals because some of the songs would be about just dogs in general or stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
All these songs are about Harvey or Harvey singing about his own experiences. And there's duets with me, and but otherwise though, it's continuing in the same idea, these silly, goofy, fun, rockin' songs that basically allow Harvey's dad, me, to play around in music in a big, wide variety of styles. We got like three just like classic. I mean, I'm basically doing the Stones on this album on two different tracks.
Nice.
Then I'm doing punk rock and garage rock, and there's a rap song on it, and it's all over the place. I get to try all these different genres that would never kind of have a place on my David Rosen albums. So
Right.
you combine all of my output from there and all my output from here, and I get to just try all these different genres and try different things, and it's just so much fun. And it's a celebration of him, which is the best part. Don't get me wrong, I love my cats. There's one right behind me in the camera right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love them, and I have song ideas for more Pup Pups to get them back in the mix as well, plus more Harvey, but that's that we'll get to that eventually. But
In the
um
mix, no pun
yeah,
intended.
yes, exactly. Exactly. But for now though, putting all that aside, it's just me and Harvey just rocking.
Well, I think one thing that I find especially fascinating about what we do as composers is that when you latch on to something and you really connect with it, it's amazing how much you could be inspired to do. Most people would think, okay, I'm going to do an album about animals, and it would end at an album about animals. And now
Right.
this is what, number five?
Number five, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's a song on the well, first of all, the album title is Three Chords and the Pooch, a play on Three Chords and the Truth, and
Mm.
there's a song on it called "The Muse," which is one of my songs, and it's just all about how I want to get back to just making other kinds of music. But that little furry dog, I mean, he is my muse, and I just can't help it. And every time I'm either feeding him or playing with him or getting him a snack or letting him out to go potty, it's like, oh, what about this? And I come up with another idea and another idea, and like my notes app is ridiculous. Like one of these days, I was actually thinking about taking all of my voice memos and just putting something out where it's just like me just singing into my phone all these little ideas I've had, and so you could hear how they kind of grew into the actual songs. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just never ends. Every time I'm looking at him and just laughing about how goofy he is because he's such a silly little guy. Like it inspires more and more music. And then
Yeah.
once I have ideas for songs, that is an excuse to be like, well, what if this one sounds like the Police? I don't know.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
let's see what different artists I could try to kind of conjure up this time.
Well, I think there's one thing to get an idea for a song, and then when you actually sit down to start working on it, which could be weeks or months later, it could take a whole different shape. I mean, I do the
Sure.
same thing. I'll be out and come up with an idea. I'll sing it into my my voice app, and I'll get home and I'll start working on it. I'm like, even a half an hour later, I'm like, yeah, I'd rather make it do this, or I'd rather
Yeah.
take it in this. It's amazing how our creativity is just ever evolving, even on something that you might think, okay, this is the idea, I've got it down, I'm just going to go home and put it into the DAW and transcribe it, basically what was in my head, but then it just goes somewhere completely different.
Totally. And on my David Rosen stuff, I'm like a little more stubborn. Like I still will see where things, if I could get more towards the idea that I kind of had as I sat down. But really, I allow that stuff to be more experimental and open up into wherever the ideas take me. But then with the Pup Pups, it's just like, this song. I want to sing about this idea and I kind of have this idea, but once I start, and part of it is because I'm not that good at guitar. So
Mm.
once I start playing, it's like, oh, actually, this was gonna be like a kind of synth pop song, but all of a sudden it sounds more like a punk rock song.
Uh,
Screw it, it's a punk rock song now. So I can go in whatever direction the song takes me in that case.
well, I think it's a little more of an open canvas, right? When you're working on your own stuff, you probably have an overall direction in mind. And with this, it's more like, and I don't want to be offensive when I use this term, but it's more like a comedy album where you really have
Yeah.
just an open canvas and variety. You could really do anything and not have to worry about continuity.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And of course, I'm still me. So, like, I still have to make sure it's, in tune and I
Mhm.
still have to make sure I'm playing in key and like,
Yeah.
everything works really well. But at the same time, yeah, whatever the song turns into, that's what it turns into.
Well, yeah, I mean, you as just as a person will have a certain professional line that you won't
Sure.
cross as far as quality. Obviously, you're going to mix the songs as you would your own stuff and
Yeah.
master it as well. You do your own mixing and mastering?
Yes. Yep.
Do you mix as you go or do you mix after?
I've always been a mix as I go person, and I've quite frankly, and like I mean, I know there's a lot of schools of thought about this, but like I don't get people who mix afterwards. It doesn't compute to me because like
Mhm.
I always hear people that are like, I've gotten to the point where I'm mixing and now I can't get it to sound good. And it's like, and this is not me like tooting my own horn or something like
Mhm.
that, but it sounds good the whole time because like I'm constantly making sure it sounds good as I add each new element. And so by the time I get to the end, it's just like little tweaks and stuff that like
Yeah.
really will like bring it on home. And so, yeah, I just don't get that mindset of saving all the mixing for the end. It's so weird. You hear these like rough demos and it's like they sound like crap. And it's like, it didn't have to sound like crap. You could have been working on it the whole time.
Exactly. And I find that sometimes, when I'm writing and obviously most of the writing I do is on a MIDI keyboard going through virtual instruments, like
Sure.
it'll sound great. And then when I bounce all the tracks to audio, which should just be a straightforward balance. The volumes, everything, it should sound exactly the same. It doesn't. It
Mm.
loses quality somewhere along the line. There's something about that transition when you bounce it. And I find that I spend more time not really mixing, but just trying to get it back to the way it sounded before I bounce the tracks. And then,
Yeah.
maybe some audio effects and things like that that I want to use. Like if you're trying to duck audio for something, obviously you can't do that in MIDI. But like those are the things I seem to spend more time between writing and mastering.
Yeah, I think the thing that I have the most trouble with is vocals, and maybe it's because I spent 20 years just making instrumental music. But
Right.
yeah, and especially with the Pup Pups, where it's like all these different voices. Like, Harvey's got his voice, I've got my voice. Sometimes Harvey the dog is actually barking, and so that's a voice as well. And then
Yeah.
I sing in different, depending on the genre of the song, I'm singing in a different voice, and so obviously it's not going to be a one size fits all for how to get my vocals to fit in the mix really well. So I find
Yeah.
that's the thing that I have the most, like, I might have to get to version 7 or 8 or 9, while I'm
Right.
exporting over and over again.
Well, do you find though that if one thing I'm doing with the Deep Purple podcast is I'm learning the way that they will do an intro to a song and then the way they kind of separate the music when the vocals come in. And it's not like they're compressing it down, but they're actually writing and performing in a way that just leaves a lane for the vocals. Like you'll have heavy guitar in the opening, and then in the background during the verse, maybe he's just doing some picking or some muted strumming or something, and it's kind of just leaving room for the vocals to come through. And it's interesting to write that way with that mix in mind, as opposed to getting it to fit in afterwards.
Sure, yeah, and I think it really comes down to uh figuring things out, really. I mean, it's just like, will this make my life easier when it comes time for finishing this song? And
Yeah.
that over the years, like, that is just something that I'm constantly trying to figure out. How can I make this whole process better for
Mhm.
myself, regardless of if I'm working on a film score, whether I'm making my instrumental songs, or whether I'm making pup pups, or even if I'm editing a podcast. Like, what will make it where I know that by the time I get towards the finishing steps, I have a little bit less to do and everything kind of
Yeah.
works already.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really the best way to go. If you're always working with that goal in mind, then the decisions that you make along the way will just fall in line with that. And, obviously, the more you do and the new ideas you have that follow that, then you carry that forward into each future project.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm curious now. I remember I was having lunch with a friend. It was in Vegas. We were at oh, what's that place that Sammy Hagar owns over at Planet Hollywood? Cabo Wabo.
Okay, right, right.
Yeah, so we were over there having lunch, and she was telling me about her friend's ice box, and there was some problem with it. And she says it kept dropping ice cubes, and she would tell me, and I came up with a rhythm to put that to for a song. And I'm curious, when you hear your dogs barking, or maybe even like a pattern of your cats meowing, have you ever gotten rhythms from the sounds that they make?
I have, yes, and it's very difficult in the long run to kind of mix that together and make it work. So I do eventually have to cheat a little bit and, massage it, because I mean, I can't exactly get them to get the beat perfectly, but at
Yeah.
least it like works into the idea. And so
Mhm.
once I'm actually kind of mixing it all together and cutting it together, it like kind of works, because like I had the initial idea from what they were doing, and then made the musical portion of it, and then it all kind of starts fitting together well. But yeah, definitely that has come into play when coming up with the ideas.
Yeah, it just seems such a natural thing as a musician. I mean, it might be more likely with drummers that we tend to hear life in rhythms, but I think pretty much anybody who writes music has that potential. I'm
Yeah.
curious how you record the dog barking, because that's really like a heavy attack with a quick decay, unless you're in a room without carpet, and then you've got the reverb. How are you recording that so it doesn't clip?
Yeah, it's not easy. I'm actually mostly using cell phone recordings, honestly,
Okay.
and then I'm just editing the crap out of them to try to make them as clean as possible.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's just not easy, and especially at his age, like I can't like lift them up to the mic, and stuff like that. So it's like
Right.
a little bit tougher. But yeah, it's definitely mostly recordings on my phone that I then just import and then try my best to clean them up really well and remove the background. I mean, you've got our like automatic water fountain in the background, or another pet
Yeah.
walking around and the thing jingling and stuff like that. That's actually the bulk of what's left to do to finish up this album
Oh.
is adjusting barks. That is like kind of where I'm at right now. There's like a couple of vocal parts that I also need to touch up, and one little ending that I need to adjust. But other than that, it's all making sure all the barks sound good and solid level with everything, and that there's no like background noise in them.
Mhm. Are you using a restoration like Isotope RX?
Yep.
Mhm.
I use Isotope RX. I use a bunch of Isotope. The Neutron
Mhm.
is a really great tool, and yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
It's so funny. I remember when I got the original version of Ozone, which looked like a 1970s green phosphorus computer monitor, and
Yeah.
and I remember that first NAMM show that I went to. I think it was their first NAMM too, and met some of the people that I've been interacting with, and to see what they've grown into in all these years. They're huge, they're dominating, they're always coming up with new ideas for software, and I mean they're a real game changer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They were bought by Native Instruments this past year, weren't they? I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, or a
Yeah, well,
merger or
I know
something.
that they've merged. I don't know if there was an
Yeah.
ownership change or if they're just doing a partnership.
Yeah.
But well, God, I mean, Native Instruments is like the king of the mountain,
Yeah. Yeah.
as far as
And
instruments and sound effects go.
yeah, even if I don't like them as a company, but that's another story. But
The one complaint I have about them right now, I mean, their customer service. I don't know if they're just too big to be able to handle inquiries at this point. But
mhm.
even the last year that I went to NAMM, they were like, "We're only doing private meetings. We don't even have a booth. We don't need a booth." Like,
Mm.
wow. I guess you really don't, but at the same time, like you should meet your customers. You should be human.
Yeah.
But the when I got Contacts, I think it was Contact 7 was the last one that I bought. And it used to be that you could be in, whatever instrument, you double click on the instrument name and it'll come up. With Contact 7, you had to click somewhere in the middle of Contact 7 and then click on the instrument name. Otherwise, it would override the last instrument you loaded.
Mm.
And like that drives me absolutely nuts to get used to that because I keep overwriting the instruments I'm selecting for songs.
That's super annoying. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have become really, really annoying, and like I don't want to go on a big tangent on it, but
Yeah.
it's just there's a lot of choices where it's like, any of the other major softwares that most people use, like when they get new versions, it's just a nice usable adjustment, and things change, but things stay the same, but things
Mhm.
get better. And I wouldn't say that about Native Instruments software.
Yeah.
So,
I think like I understand the idea of a grocery store a couple times a year completely rearranging their shelves, moving
mhm.
everything around because when you go in, you tend to just go right to the things that you want to get. You're not impulse buying. But when it comes to software, I really don't think that's necessary. It's not like, well, they're not using these features enough. We gotta get them to look for this stuff so they'll find that we could do this or whatever. Like it's just,
Ridiculous.
yeah, it's frustrating. Okay, so with your David Rosen music, which I
Mhm.
also am a huge fan of. I love
Oh,
your
thank
your
you.
creativity, the way that you blend sounds. I mean, you're a great audio engineer too. Um, when you're getting ready to start a project, and I know that you're working on one now, in between the Pup Pups albums, how do you approach, like, let's say I want to do a new David Rosen album. Do you walk in with a concept? Do you just start writing and see what takes shape? How do you go about that?
Well, the weird thing, and it's a difficult question to answer only because the album that I'm currently, well, I should say I'm not working on because I haven't even touched it in like 8 months because I've been doing
Right.
all this pups, but that I'm currently working on to finish and will probably be out by the end of the year because it's literally like almost done. Like it's like 70, 80% done or something. But um, that album is the last like portion of material that I've been working on for over 6 or 7 years now. Like I just put out an album in January,
Right.
which was almost a preemptive bonus tracks collection in a way. It was 40 songs and it was all of the rest of the music I had been working on over these last 6 to 8 years.
Mhm.
And it was called Missing Pieces. This album is the final piece of that puzzle, so to speak. And so I haven't started a new project in a long time. So that's why I say it's kind of a difficult thing
Sure,
to
yeah.
say. I do have in mind that my next album, once I, have some distance from this one, is going to be more of like a more mindfully put together project where like there is a very specific theme to it and I'm not going to work on multiple albums at the same time. I'm just going to be working on that one, but that remains to be seen if that's really what I'm going to end up doing. You just never know. But yeah, so I mean, generally speaking though, since I put out my first David Rosen album in 2013 all the way through till now, um, it's all just been a matter of I'm working on songs, I'm working on songs, I'm working on songs. I have 50 unfinished songs. Oh, these 16 seem to work as an album.
Right, yeah.
And so these are the ones that I'm focusing on. But
Mhm.
and they all eventually get finished, and then they kind of piece together into which albums work the best. So it's like I'm not really, but at the same time, once I start like hearing these songs together and like kind of playlisting them in a way where I'm like, oh, these really go together well, it's definitely more of an after the fact kind of thing. Um, which is like so different from like working on a film score or something like that,
Right.
where it's like, there's a very specific beginning, middle, and end that has to happen. And
Mhm.
whereas with these albums, it's like I'm working on songs, the ones that fit together is really how it kind of comes together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think because you've got so much music to choose from, it almost causes its own problem. It's like you just, group together things that make sense and go, okay, now what's the concept for the cover art? What do I want to call this? How do I explain why these songs came together? I'm
Sure.
doing something a little different where I'm taking my older songs and, every year I'm trying to put out two albums. One, new versions of older songs that I've written because in the early days, my writing was very repetitive, very simple, might be enjoyable on one level, but really, as I've grown as a composer, I look back at these songs and go, this was a good start, but I don't want this to be what I put out there. I want it to be something that has a little more substance, a little more
Right.
characters, interesting. So I'm, doing one album of that every year. And then I want to write like a new album every year, just whatever the concept is, just something completely different. I find it's really helping me to have things to go back and forth between. And you say that you're just going to work on that album, but I have a feeling you're going to be like, okay, but I got an idea for another pop song.
Yeah, I gotta stop. I gotta stop doing that. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, I'll probably be doing a David Rosen and a Pup Pups, or for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future at the same time. But at least I won't be like, okay, this David Rosen song could be on this album. This one could be on another one I'm going to put out in 6 years. Like
Right.
I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that though. I want when I start a song in 2026 for it to be released in 2026 or like maybe early 2027. Not to
Mhm.
have these songs that there's one song on this next album that the file name I could tell it was started in 2018 and I'm like
Wow.
that's ridiculous. And it's awesome. I'm super proud of it. Like it sounds great. And the thing is like, so after my first four albums, I had the idea back then in 2018 that I was going to put out two albums at the same time. It was more content and this next one, which is called And Other Unexplained Phenomena. And
Mm.
the idea was more content was going to be just kind of this is kind of sounds self-deprecating, but like more of the same basically is what it was going to be. It was just going to be a continuation of those first four albums. And then Another Unexplained Phenomena was going to be me leaning into when I always say my music is very dark. It was going to be leaning into that and just a really, really heavy dark album and like
Nice.
save all those tracks for that. And so I was working on these two albums in tandem, and then the pandemic happened. And I was just sitting alone in my house working on music, and all of a sudden I had a whole other album, and that turned into my self-titled 2020 album.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't until what 2023 that I put out more content. But at that point, I already had that album and this album already almost done. And I started planning the missing pieces, all these extra songs that didn't fit on either of those. So it all got so convoluted, is what I'm trying to say here. And
Yeah.
so it's just too many different things spinning at the same time. And so that's why in my mind that won't happen again. I'm going to be at this big kind of cutoff point where I can reformat my hard drive. I can start from scratch. I'm gonna pretend like I don't have, even though there's probably stuff on there. I'm gonna pretend I have no more unfinished music. It's just like
Wow.
it's a line in the sand. It's only new music from that point on once I get that album out. So yeah,
Interesting. But do you have fragments like I find sometimes I'll come up with an idea, I'll start working on it, I'll be done for the day, get up the next day, listen back and go, I know I was really into this last night, but today I'm not feeling this song at all anymore.
tons of them.
Yeah.
Tons of them. And that's a lot of the missing pieces tracks came from that actually. And a lot of them I'd completely forgot about. And I went back to like 2, 3 years later and I was like, oh, wow, this is actually a really great start to something. Let me see if I could finish it. And that's where most of those songs kind of came from. And so that's why I'm like, I did 40 of those. If there's more, who needs them, honestly? Like 40 of these songs that just kind of got left behind that ended up getting finished. That I should be happy about that. And then
Oh
along with
yeah.
the actual more intention based stuff, I'm getting that all finished. So I'm set.
Well, yeah, and I think too, it's like maybe not every idea needs to be turned into a song. Sometimes they're
Yeah.
just ideas, and maybe you'll end up using that subconsciously in another piece somewhere. It's always possible. But I just find for myself that I want everything I do to be out there, but at the same point, I think you and I write pretty quickly, and we tend to write a lot. So at some point, it
Mm.
does become like, am I going to have 187 albums out there before I die? And
Yeah.
who's going to listen to that collection?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, also keep in mind, along with these albums, I also have prepared for release at least another 3 or 4 film scores that
Yeah.
I chopped up into tracks and named them all and everything. So they're ready. I will probably release at least 1 or 2 more of those. There's one I'm definitely going to be releasing probably next year, whenever the film comes out. And so yeah, I mean, I got the soundtrack albums too, but then that becomes a whole nother question because it's like if we're talking about, I mean, of course, there's the main themes and stuff, but like if we're talking about most of the more like mood type, stuff that sets these scenes, it's like, how many of those tracks do I really have to have out there under my name, like on
Right.
Spotify and Apple and all that stuff? Like, just dark, spooky pads and stuff. Like, I don't need all of that to be released. So, some of it will end up turning into maybe a compilation or something like that, but then some
Yeah.
of it does feel like full albums. So I'm going to put them out as soundtrack albums.
Yeah, I think it's probably a case by case basis. Like I have an idea for an album I want to do that's called From the Cutting Room Floor, which is music that I put into films where the films never got finished or
Hmm.
the director was like, I just don't think it's good enough and they never released it, which sadly happens a lot. I worked on a film that was
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful that I love and no one has ever seen it. And
Yeah,
and
that's
it
happened
makes
to
me
me
so
too.
sad.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks, but it's just part of the business. Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever like went back to something old and released it just because like, hey, it's ready, it's available, like why not put it out? Or do you just like say this doesn't really represent me even though I really like it and you just kind of just keep holding on to it?
Well, I'm starting to do that as I have time. I've actually got 3 film scores on my drive right now that I'm working on prepping for release on Bandcamp. The film scores I usually throw up for a buck. They're
Hmm.
they're mostly short films and things that I had fun with. But the music is cool, and I think more so it's like it shows the progression of my career and how
Yeah.
I've grown as a writer and an engineer. So yeah, I'm trying to work through my list and slowly get everything that is complete enough to release out there.
Yeah.
It's just finding the time to get it all done. And I'm constantly wanting to write new stuff and work on old stuff at the same time. And
Right, right.
you can only work physically on one thing at a time, no matter how many are in your current project folder.
Yeah. I always worry it'll confuse my listeners. Like I need to put a big giant stamp on the album cover art. This is old. Like even though the
Right.
release
Yeah.
date is 2025, this is not stuff I made this year because
Yeah.
like again, I'm proud of it. I would want to listen to it myself myself, like on a streaming service where I'm very lazy and I listen to all my music on Spotify, which is terrible. But like, if it's just on my phone or something, I'm gonna forget it's there. So if I put it out as an actual release, I'll listen to it. And but at the same time, I don't want people to like be listening to more content and then listen to that and then listen to another unexplained phenomena and be like, what
Yeah.
the hell happened for that one album?
Right.
Why does it sound like that? But all of his other stuff sounds all new and good and stuff,
Well,
you
I,
know?
I think though there are artists that you kind of get used to are, especially if they're film composers, like with Hans Zimmer, and you go through different film scores he's done where one score to another can be very, very different styles. And,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think people kind of get used to that. But if you're an artist like, say, Patrick O'Hearn, who played with Frank Zappa, who played in Missing Persons, and then he went out on his own as a new age artist. And, he's done some soundtrack work, which is different from that. And I think that it's a lot more understandable to the audience than it used to be. Also, just because people that are creatives just create and don't necessarily stay in one thing unless you're in like a rock band, for example.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But especially if you're a film composer, because we're called on to do so many different kinds of things
Yeah.
that, like you might have to do a Middle Eastern score and then a dark underscore for a film with a romantic lead piece. And it's just, that's one thing I love about it is just the variety of things that I would probably never purposefully write unless I
Right.
had to do it for a film score.
No, for sure, absolutely. There's so many, there's such a wide variety over the years.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you about your podcast. You've been doing a lot of live shows for a long time now, and I love the effort that you go to. You bring people on stage, you have an audience, you talk about films. You I haven't listened to it yet, but you recently covered a film that I absolutely love, which was Dogma, which
Hmm.
is finally reclaimed by Kevin Smith, getting its due back in theaters, which is really nice to see. And he and Jason Mewes are doing a little tour on that. How did you like covering a classic like that?
That was awesome. And it was actually the first time I've done one of the live shows on an older movie. Usually it's
Mm.
on, whatever the new release is that week
Right.
or whatever. So that was a really cool thing. And I twisted up the format a little bit, did it a little bit different. And hopefully I'll continue to do more older films too. It certainly makes it a little bit easier to, hey, why don't we cover that old movie? It's a nice
Right.
thing. But yeah, the live shows have been awesome. I've been piecing it together for 8 years, but
Wow.
I wanted to do live shows like right away, but the pandemic kind of got in the way of all those plans. I had done one
Yeah.
before that and then kind of slowed things down. But yeah, the last 3 years though, I've been doing them consistently every month, most months two, and a couple of times three in a month.
Wow.
And yeah, it's awesome. I keep getting these panels out to join me. So how piecing it together works for anyone who hasn't listened to it before. I talk about a movie with a guest through the lens of what other movies might have inspired it. And so we'll each come up with what we call puzzle pieces. They're different movies and that we could kind of connect in a different way, whether it's like the theme of the movie or, individual scenes or performances or something like that that it reminds us of. And so with the live shows, we take it right there to the movie theater. I've had an incredible uh, collaboration with Maya Cinemas and Downtown Cinemas here in Las Vegas, and that's where I go pretty much back and forth every month between these two independent theaters. And yeah, I'll get instead of just one-on-one, I'll get three people, and we do it right there in the theater after the movie screens. We just go right up in front by the screen, and anybody who wants to stick around afterwards can hang out. We do the whole puzzle pieces thing, then we get some audience participation going, see if everybody in the crowd has any ideas. Sometimes I'll get some freebies from the studios to give out, and
Nice.
it's an awesome thing. And building a whole community around going back to the movies. The best thing in the world is when people tell me that like they hadn't really been going to the movies for a while, but they started coming back out because of my shows, and it's like that's like all I really want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something that people, I think, with COVID got really adjusted to not going out unless you absolutely had to. And then
Yeah.
even though we now have the freedom to come and go as we please again, I think there's a kind of a subconscious mentality that's like, if I don't really need to go out, I'm not going to, especially when
Yeah.
it's 117 degrees outside in
Mm,
Vegas and, getting
no.
people to leave their house, even though it's going to feel great in the cinema, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Just getting them to go from the car to the building is a challenge. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you're doing your live show as opposed to the regular podcast, is it a challenge to come up with puzzle pieces on the fly and have that discussion about, I've just watched a 2 hour movie, I've just taken this all in for the first time, and now I got to talk about it like I'm
Right.
versed in this movie.
In theory, it should be, but I
Mhm.
don't know if it's adrenaline taking over or what, but like it has not really been an issue yet. Like
Okay.
every single time we're able to meet even my guests who they range the gamut from like, film critics to filmmakers to just people who love movies that happen to say, "Hey, I'd love to be on the show sometime." Everybody has been able to come up with three things that the movie reminded them of. And even if, worst case scenario, we're talking about Captain America 3 and they say Captain America 1. Like, worst case
Yeah.
scenario, at least if they can bring up a reason for it and not just say the name, then
Mhm.
it's fine. Why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. It's like we all just are having this great conversation. They've been funny. These last couple of shows have really been some of the best ones. Both that Dogma show and then just a couple of nights ago we did 28 Years Later,
Oh
which
yeah.
I didn't love, but it was all right. But the
Mhm.
the conversation was great though. We had so much fun talking about that one and a lot of great audience participation and we all just had so much to say about it, both good and bad. And like, the puzzle pieces is one thing, but then the rest of the conversation is also just a really great time.
Yeah, and I think people just love being involved.
Yeah.
Podcasts have become so popular, as you know, but I think that people, they tend to, like, they'll listen to the conversation and they'll enjoy that. But then you might notice too, like on your socials, people will start chiming in and saying, "Well, I like what you said about this," or "I disagree with that." People want to be involved in these live events, give them the opportunity to interact instead of just tagging you in a post or
Yeah.
sending you an email with a comment of, yeah, we recorded that a month ago. I don't even remember saying that, but thanks. you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Have you ever seen that meme where it's like, this is what it feels like to listen to a podcast, and it's like this girl sitting there laughing next to a poster of two people talking, and like, and this is like the real life version of that because you actually get to be there with the podcast and put in your 2 cents and be a part of the conversation.
Well, I went to an event. It was at Tom Devlin's Monster Museum in Boulder
Hmm.
City.
He's been on the show before.
Has he really?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. He's a really nice guy. His whole staff, everybody up there is absolutely fantastic. But I went to a live event of Talk Scary to Me, which is Taylor Scout Compton and Danielle Harris have their own podcast, and they were up there doing a live event. And it was really different from just listening to the show at my convenience and actually just sitting there, seeing their expressions, really just being in the room with their energy. I think it makes such a difference, and I'm really glad that you're doing those shows. I'm not surprised that people are enjoying them so much.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll be able to keep doing them. We got coming up in July, we've got Superman and Fantastic Four, so those will
Wow.
hopefully be well attended and a lot of fun. I'm not the biggest superhero guy, but I know that people love those movies, and so hopefully we'll get a nice crowd for those. And then I can't quite announce yet August, but I'll just say that both of the movies I'm super, super excited about for August. So as long as those get confirmed, I'll be announcing those soon. But
Okay.
yeah, and we have Megan 2.0 coming up this week at
Right.
the time of this recording, which that I cannot wait for. I'm so excited.
I have not seen those movies. The trailers that I've seen make it look really interesting.
Hmm.
I'm going to have to carve out some time and check those out because I think it's current. It's like current issues that we're dealing with, and I like when things are. Yeah, I don't mind a movie that's complete fantasy. Take like Friday the 13th or Halloween or something where like this is never going to happen.
Hmm.
You can't keep shooting a guy and he's not just going to go and walk
Yeah,
away.
sure. Yeah.
But I like movies where there's almost like real life type stakes where this could really happen. And I
Hmm.
think we're heading in a direction, or at least the fear is that we're heading in a direction where this kind of stuff could be a reality. So I find it really fascinating.
Oh yeah, and I think it's coming up in a lot of movies lately.
Yeah. Can you believe that it's been 50 years this week since Jaws came out?
That's wild. Yeah, Jaws would have been a fun one to do actually if I
Yeah.
had Yeah, that would have been really fun to do that in a theater, but maybe on the 51st anniversary, we'll see.
Or if you could find a way to do it, like I think, don't they have a big movie screen at Lake Las Vegas where you could get the inner tubes and do the podcast on the water?
That sounds horrifying, but yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that movie in the drive-in. I was two and slept through the first half, so I missed the whole, suit made of anchors and all that stuff. And I
Uh,
woke up like right when Jaws popped out of the water. I'm sure it had
nice.
no effect on who I am as a person,
No.
but that happened. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to talk to you a little bit too about your film score work. When you do your spotting sessions with a director, are you one that just kind of more backs off and lets the director talk and listen to what they have to say and take it all in? Do you interject your ideas at that point? How do you usually handle a spotting session?
Usually I do like to just kind of jot down everything they have to say,
Mhm.
because I mean, the way I work is genuinely just lock me in my room and start working, you know? So
Yeah.
like all of that is great to have in my head and to to kind of refer back to as I'm going through it scene by scene. But at the same time, you know how it is, like a lot of filmmakers, they don't really know music, and I don't necessarily know music in the way that maybe a collaborative conversation would necessarily be the most fruitful thing. So it's
Sure.
more a matter of finding out what are they trying to convey, if it's not 100% clear already in what's on screen, and and getting their just thoughts and notes. And it's always the best. Like I find not only the best for working, but also the best for the results when they're just kind of like, I like what you do. I trust what you have to, add to the project. Let's just go for it, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, that really is nice. One thing that I tried to do with directors after I got a little more experience and confidence as a film composer was just try to talk to them in emotion. Like take the music completely out of the conversation and just say,
Yeah.
how intense do you want them to feel here? How long do you want them to feel that way? Like where do you want this to drop off? And really just kind of pinpoint that and almost make like the emotional equivalent of a tempo map and say,
Yeah, yeah.
here's the emotion, now let's make that happen.
Yeah, no, 100%. That is like that's really what you're trying to get out of them because they need to kind of convey that, but sometimes they just don't necessarily have the vocabulary for it.
Yeah, it does get to be very difficult because the conversation, if they think that you want to talk to them in musical terms and they're going to have to know, well, I want a violin here and I want the cello to start here, and they expect that you're kind of tell me how to score this, especially if they're a younger director and they haven't really had those meetings yet.
Yeah.
So it can be a little bit frustrating and a little bit tricky, but I've always felt like once I've gotten through that meeting and it's just me and the film, I feel like, okay, now I have my canvas and now I can start doing
Yeah.
what needs to be done here.
That's when it becomes fun.
Yeah. Have you ever hired out for a piece like you need maybe a club scene or something like that? And you're like, well, I got to find a band that's got a song I can license, or do you tend to just do it all yourself?
Yeah, I haven't had to do that yet. There's been some films where they already had some existing songs that they planned on using for a
Mhm.
specific scene, like a club scene or something like that. But I haven't personally had to hire out before. Although I have a couple of times, they were like, "Do you know anybody that has any rap songs?" And I was like, "Oh, I produced this rapper back in 2004-ish, and so let me see if any of his songs will fit." And they liked it, and so I got his song placed in that. So that was cool.
Nice. I've been asked to negotiate licenses before, but anytime I've worked on a film, yeah, it's kind of been the same thing. Like they've either already got music in mind and they just want me to negotiate and complete the deal, or I could just write it myself.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the more you could do in-house, I find it's easier not just because of just being able to control everything and make it all consistent, but also just not waiting on people to do their part. I can finish things. I can make sure we're on a timeline. If I don't have to, depend on other people to come in and get their stuff done, I
Yeah.
feel more confident in committing to things, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, I think we've covered a lot of stuff, but I want to talk to you about Wax Tracks. Tell me what's going on with, well, let's tell everybody what it is and then tell me what's going on with it.
So Wax Trax Records is my family's record store here in Las Vegas. We've been here since 1998. Before that, we were in Pennsylvania for many, many years since I was like a little kid. Before that, it was just mail order in Brooklyn. So it's my dad's entire life basically. But he's getting up there in age. He's in his 80s, and he just the time was eventually going to come at some point when I would have to take the place over. And it's where I work during the day anyway for, 20, 30 years at this point. But
Yeah.
um, that time has come. And so now I'm running Wax Tracks the past month or so. And he's still coming in every day with me. He sits there and chats up all the customers and throws his 2 cents in everywhere. But generally speaking, he's just kind of okay with the idea that, hey, if I'm gonna be in charge, I'm not gonna spend 6 days a week there all day if I'm not in charge. Like,
Yeah.
before a month ago, I was there for my very, very, very lucky with what my schedule was for years and years and years, and to go from that very lucky schedule to being there every single day, except for I made us take Wednesdays off as we're just closed on Wednesdays, but yeah, to not have any of that time anymore for all my other projects, which we've just discussed over the last 40, 50 minutes, how many projects I'm working on, and now I don't have the
Right.
time for it anymore, but I'm still managing to squeeze it in somehow. But uh yeah, I'm gonna have to be in charge if I'm, gonna be there that much. And so it's not even so much a matter of like having that title, it's a matter of not having to answer, to anybody that, to being able to kind of come up with the ideas of how we should move forward and how we should change things. And I have a lot of like changes in mind for the store that we're kind of slowly but surely working our way towards, hoping that by the time I get all that in place, we'll kind of maybe do like a little relaunch kind of thing to go along with that. But yeah, it's been fun and it's been cool, and I'm certainly happy to do it. You can't complain about running one of the coolest record stores in the entire world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk about what kind of stuff that you carry because you're not really just an average record store.
Right. Yeah. We don't even have like distributors or anything like that. This is all just a collection my dad has amassed over 60, 70 years. He has stuff that people come in from all over the world looking for. We just had some people from Germany today looking for Kiss records, like original
Wow.
pressings and all that stuff. And like it's just stuff that you just simply can't find anywhere else. We do have some new stuff, but mostly we're talking about classic rock, we're talking about soul, we're talking about jazz, blues, albums, 45s, just all of the original stuff. And lately a lot of the newer stuff is becoming very popular on vinyl too. So we do have
Yeah.
some of that, but
Mhm.
we're definitely predominantly about the old school stuff. We also have memorabilia, CDs, tapes. So definitely everything that you can imagine. It's an old gutted out house. It's 3 floors, and every square inch is just filled with records and memorabilia, and it's quite crazy.
That's excellent. Do you guys have an online presence as well, or is it just local?
Not at all, just local. I may start to incorporate some of that, but that is a huge undertaking when you're going from zero to, I mean, you don't want to go from zero to just like listing 50 CDs, like
Right. Yeah.
and so like that's just a big job. But we'll see. It might take some form of online presence as I start making some changes around there, but yeah, all in person.
And where is the store located?
It's here in Vegas, 2909 South Decatur Boulevard. That's on Decatur, right between Sahara and Desert Inn for anyone here who's local. And yeah, we're there every day except Wednesdays from 10 to 3.
That's a nice little area too. I'm curious if you can shed some light on this, and if you can't, that's fine. But I find that when I'm looking for records online as a vinyl collector, the biggest challenge I have is besides people not knowing what they're worth, they think if the band is big, then it must be a very expensive album, and that's
Sure.
very rarely the case because they're heavily produced. But people don't grade their albums well. I
Mm.
had one that I got where they had listed the jacket as very good plus, and I got it, and it had clearly been dipped in water at some point.
Yeah. Well, and that's a thing too, like, because there's the obvious thing that it's 2025 and people can just go on Discogs and buy the records, but like you don't know what you're getting until it actually shows up, and that's a big thing. And we're known for, I mean, my pricing is a little bit more lenient, shall we say, not like my dad's pricing over the last however many years. So don't get scared away when you see the reviews. But that being said, we're also not a bargain store, where
Yeah.
you're not. We have a $5 section, but otherwise, records they start 20 and $30 and go up from there, depending on pressings and condition and all that kind of stuff. Although we really don't even keep anything that's not at least a VG plus in the
Yeah.
store. We just get rid of it. But when you order online, like, yeah, the price might look better, but you don't know what you're getting until you get it. So when you come into the store, you actually see like, wow, this is like a mint copy of a pressing from the 70s, like, and somehow it's right there in your hands right now. So it becomes a lot more valuable at that moment.
Oh, absolutely. And being that I recently picked up collecting vinyl again in the last couple of years, I've been amazed at just the depth of differences between one issue and another and how the value can change so much from even one year to the next.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's totally true, and it can be very frustrating when pricing things because it's like, there's just so many. Like I tell people, like some records, I'm gonna go type it in there, and there's gonna be like 8 pressings, but some records, I'm gonna type it in there, and there's like 300 pressings. It's
Yeah.
like you have to. I'm sorry, you got to just kind of hang out, look around while I find the right one because I'm not going to price this thing until I know what it is, and that's part of the job that me and the guys that work for us do is basically trying to price things for people when they pick them out, and it's a process, because as a collector, like you got to really know what you're looking at.
Well, and am I wrong in thinking that the vinyl itself can be deceptive? Like you can look at the vinyl record, you can inspect it, and it looks fine. You're not seeing any visible scratches, and then you put it on the turntable, and it's skipping all over the place.
I mean, that can happen for sure, but I mean, generally speaking, though, I mean, if it looks clean, it's probably good, but that definitely can happen. And, we guarantee. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's good. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like an exciting place. I'm sorry I didn't make it down there when I lived there, but on my next trip out, I will definitely stop by and check it out. It won't be on a Wednesday, obviously,
Yes.
but yeah, Vegas is such an exciting place. I would imagine even since I left in November, things have probably changed a little bit. Are they still doing the auto racing though on the strip, or did they
Oh,
cancel that?
oh God, yes, they are.
They are.
Yeah, it just destroys the strip. But if it's working for tourism, which I don't think it is, but if it is, then great,
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole place just is insane when that happens for that week and for the weeks before and the weeks after.
Yeah.
It's a mess. But what you should do is you should try to schedule to come to Wax Trax and do the double feature of then coming to one of my live shows, and I'll
Oh,
get to see you
yeah.
and we'll hang out. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think I will do that. Before you go, though, one thing that I have heard about Vegas is that a lot of the buffets are going away. The Luxor is now getting rid of their buffet, and seems like they're down to very minimal amounts. At least on the
Yeah,
strip. I don't know about maybe some of the off the strip hotels, maybe keeping that as an attraction.
I haven't been to any in many years just for health reasons, but
Mm,
I do remember during the pandemic they closed them all, and then they
yeah.
said this is a thing of the past. There's never going to be buffets ever again, but they certainly reopened after that. So I don't know if they're going away. I do know I go to the movies at the South Point quite often, and the
Mm.
line for the buffet there is always just like straight down the hotel, like around all of the machines and everything. So I don't think that one's going anywhere, but maybe some of the ones on the strip are going away. I don't know.
Yeah, the Luxor was always my favorite, and even though I don't live there, and I even when I lived there, I only would go when when people were visiting. But that was the one I would always take people to, and I heard that was going away. I'm like, man, the atmosphere is so cool down there, and that was always a good spot. But Vegas is one of those cities that you just can't get attached to anything because it's constantly changing.
Yeah, no, it's true. And the really annoying thing is all the construction nowadays. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely everywhere. But we survive.
Well, there's a reason they said the orange cone is the state flower. And when I first,
Yeah.
when I first moved there, and I was living off of Green Valley Parkway in Henderson, just which is kind of on the border of Vegas, And it was like every week there were cones in a new location. I'm like, how is this possible? Haven't you resurfaced the entire city at this point?
It never ends. It absolutely never ends.
That is true. Well, thank you so much, David, for coming to visit. As always, folks, the links are in the show notes for his Bandcamp, for his website, piecing it together. Check all these things out. This guy is, I don't want to call you a machine, because a machine, it kind of like, I get the impression that you're just churning out things. And the one thing that I'll say about your output is you may have a high amount of output, but I've never heard anything from you that I didn't think was quality, that I felt like you rushed it to hurry up and get it out to like meet something. So I don't want to use the term machine. So I'll just say heavy, high quality output.
Ah, I appreciate that. Yes, thank you very much. And yeah, to me, it's like if I'm going to put it out there, it's got to be worthwhile to me, and because I'm going to be the one who listens to it more than anybody, so it's
Right.
got to be
Yeah.
something that I actually want to listen to. And so I just happen to like listening to a lot of different stuff, so I make a lot of different stuff.
Exactly. And I kind of love that you listen to yourself on Spotify, because at least you're earning your 0.0007 cents for
Oh
every
yeah,
play.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Check out Deep Purple Smoke on the podcast Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then, of course, every week, the HaskinCast podcast is on Wednesdays. Check out the Piecing It Together podcast and all of David's links in the show notes. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.